Okay, remember they're changing my voice, so I left off saying, she would say, these so-and-so boys, right? We'll call them Haru boys, right? We'll call them Egyptian boys, except for my last name, right? And she said, they're so smart. They do algebra 2 in first grade and da da da. Because my mom would go on and on about it to every teacher and say, hey, they're misunderstood, right? And so and she says, can they write neatly? Okay. And she says no. Now, during this time period, the government later on tells me that they did things to embarrass me in class. Okay. Now, I don't want to go into detail into what they are. It's very prankish. Some of them are. It's very unfortunate what they did, but they did things to embarrass me. And so this female was like, she was an older. This is like the 80s, right? This is like 87 or whatever, right? And less than 20 years after Martin Luther King was assassinated, and this person is an older person, might have been born in 1900 or something. Like, she's older, right? No, maybe not 1900, maybe like 1920 or something. Okay, so she grew up in a racist time, and she's bitter. She doesn't like the fact that these black kids are a brain surgeon's son, and that my family's wealthier than most of the other private kids' schools. Not that I care about money. And she doesn't like that we're smarter than these other kids, okay? And when you're her age, you've seen a lot in your life, right? You've seen dumbass people of various races, including her own race, okay, and how they start as kids, how they grow. So she knows that we're going to be smarter than these other guys. So she's specifically mad about white social norms. She said, write neatly like a proper white English boy, okay? And she says, do it the white man's way, is what she's saying subtly. And she's saying, get in line with the white man's way. That's what she's saying. So she's not just like, oh, I hate your... She is mad to some degree about the writing being sloppy. But the exact reason why is like a Nazi would be mad teaching someone from another race, right? German, okay, if they're the German teacher, okay? So she teaches a bunch of things, including English, right? So she's this white, racist, old lady who, that's my impression of her, we'll say, to keep it simple, who teaches various things, math and English and so on and so forth, right? She's like, it's like the first grade teacher. She teaches a bunch of things, right? Okay. So then we get to, eventually I got a teacher named Mrs. Johnson, and a teacher, I got Mrs. Saw again. I get Mrs. Sullivan again in fourth grade. And that's, when my family had enough and so on and so forth. So we transferred to another school in the Almaden area. Okay, so that Cardin, is what Cardin was what it's called. And it's notorious for being unfair to people. People have bad experiences. The other school, I think a lot more people liked it. But I don't like any of these schools because I'm different. And, I'm shunned by females my age. They look at it as I'm a black guy and they're not attracted to me. Okay, if I had been any other race, they would be more open to it. The general rule of thumb is if you're a black guy in a private school in the 80s and 90s, females who are white, who are the majority of the school, they're not attracted to you. Okay, and there's like nothing you can do about it. The conditioning was extreme. That's the general rule of thumb. Someone might try to contest the argument, but that's how it is, right? And it's strange the way, uglier females, right? Most people feel less attractive. They would be the ones who would be attracted to you, if anything. Okay? And it was astounding how it never failed. And I was basically convinced, to some degree, I was an uglier little kid, right? I wasn't that attractive. But I was basically convinced that I was ugly and that I was never going to be handsome. So I prayed to God. I prayed to God as a child. And one of the times I did was going to Santa Cruz. I remember driving to Santa Cruz, seeing, coming up on the boardwalk, we see this stuff, right? The different rides you can see from the road. And I'm praying, and this is that area where there's a lot of hot chicks. I'm praying that I'm going to have sex with a woman before I die. Man, that is unbelievable, right? If someone was a pimp or something, they might want to slap every hot chick around across, all up and down the block or something, because there's no excuse for a brain surgeon's son who's from such a good family to think that he's never going to have sex. I mean, there's just so much racism. There's so many petty people. There's so many shallow groupies, just punk groupies, just groupie, just stupid, just clueless. Sabrina the Teenage Witch, right, in the TV series, just foolish. With an emphasis of fixation on dating their own race, which is toxic and racist. I mean, it is dumb to look at it that way. You look at the average racist white guy has jacked off to many minorities in porn. Okay, excuse my French, right? And this is a fact of life. people are attracted to other races. And it's not just, they might say it was jungle fever. It's just fucking human nature. Okay, if someone has a tan and you're the same race as them and you don't have a tan, is it jungle fever? I mean, the differences are minimal. However, in the midst of this, there are different human species. Why is this happening, right? Why are some people get it and some people are racist? Why are some people super athletic and some people aren't? Because there's different human races. And for those of you who don't understand, right, one example, the white supremacists tried to claim that they're superior because they're mixed with Neanderthal, and they probably first said other races aren't, then they figured out, that every race, but as the story goes, but black people, right, magically sub-Saharan Africans is mixed with Neanderthal, right, as the story goes. They'll probably correct it later a little bit. Of course, me, myself, I'm mixed with it to some degree, but because I'm part white. But it's the idea that there's different human species, right, humanoids and different species that are mixed in. And so they're not classifying it correctly. It's not just Neanderthal and Homo sapien, right? There's more than one type of Homo sapien, okay? And they try to chop it up to race, but it doesn't cover it. That's why scientists came up with the conclusion that race isn't a valid scientific concept. But if we were to really break it down and we had the technology to, we would see that when it comes to natural gene expression, which they're hindering, remember, eugenics is about impairing certain races and certain families and certain groups so they can try to make their group seem naturally superior and then argue that they're naturally meant to lead, which made a complete fool of themselves. It made them look like complete scum and brought them down to the dirt and so on and so forth, but they still insist on doing it. Okay, I got a lot to say, and I'm trying to speak quickly because, I don't want to take up a zillion years in these videos. But anyway, so there's different species, right? Michael Jordan, for example, isn't the same subspecies as Carlton, okay? Or, as Debo from Friday, or Mr. T, okay? There's different types of Africans, there's different ethnic groups, but within those ethnic groups, there's enough variation, okay, that we can say that they're different species. It has to do with gene expression. So think about a bunch of different people going to different places, and there's wars, and they're mixing together, and the dominant genes express itself in an unpredictable way at times, and then you say, boom, that's like a species from the past expressing itself. However, just because you're a species from the past expressing itself in that part of your gene, and those particular genes and gene groupings, doesn't mean that you're forgiven by God. Okay, you say, well, I'm an expression of, Nigerians 100,000 years ago, and now the Messiah's gone, and no. Humanity, all the genes in humanity will be cut off after my flesh dies. There'll be no way to be right with God, okay? It's like in Isaiah 57, right? The righteous are taken away to be spared from evil, and you wicked people, right? So all the opportunity for those genes, you're going to be, going to hell, and you're trying to find your life, right? Whoever finds their life will lose. Whoever loses their life for my sake will find it. You're trying to find your life and have a child. Anyone dumb enough to try to continue to reproduce, okay, in this pure evil world with not a speck of hope, knowing that there's supercomputers and all this technology, okay, their children are far too evil to be good. And there's no way for them to be good. They're far too dumb and evil to be good, and there's no way for them to be good. Put the two together. What do you get? It's far overkill. They're cut off. Okay. So going to, the next school I went to in Almaden, okay, it was a different form of racism. Like, I've seen different forms of racism. I've seen the racism at, restaurants. I've seen rich people who think that the white man is, I've met these people myself who think the white man is the pinnacle, and there's a spectrum of how much of they're assholes and how much they believe that and so on and so forth. And so going to the school in Almaden, which is a very square part of San Jose, for those of you who don't know, there was this kind of square racism. It's kind of like this kind of matter-of-fact, happy-go-lucky, well, if you don't do it the white man's way, you must be stupid. Okay, it's like one of the best examples is English, right? They say speak proper English, and they say they're so annoyed when people don't speak proper English. So you're basically racist against immigrants. You're racist against people who are from a different race, who don't speak your language as well as you because they don't have that genetic proclivity to. Because European, right, Latin-based languages are a language grouping, and English is one of them. So whether they're Spanish or French or Italian or whatever, they have that Latin root, which means that their brains have evolved to speak that language, their vocal cords, you name it, right? The structure of their speaking system, their communication system in their body. Okay, so it's pathetic. And not to mention people who are mentally handicapped and so on and so forth.